Andrew Johnson's back was killing him every time he had to rise, but he wouldn't disturb the ceremony in any way. He had to sit upright on the leather wing chair positioned on the small stage facing the ceremony. His back was notably worse during the cold weather, and the spring nights were as cold as winter. The pain was irritating enough that he was paying even less attention to the ceremony than usual. He looked down at his white gloves and blue collar, trying to avert eye contact with the others in the room, not wanting them to see how much pain he was in. Then, he started to think about how the rectangle apron on his lap reminded him of the aprons that they give people at fancy restaurants, and tried to hold back his smile. The most important task of the day for Johnson was to have Benjamin Goodwin's application successfully admitted to the first degree of Freemasonry. From where Johnson was positioned, he wasn't paying attention to the lodge members on either side of the room. Instead, he was facing the worshipful master. It was a ceremony he had seen many times. There was more decor behind him, including the United States flag on his left side. With no windows, Johnson felt a bit claustrophobic at times. Despite this, Johnson greatly enjoyed the architecture. It had a mock Renaissance style with Greek and Roman elements, and was complemented with golden decor on the door frames and paneled walls. It gave a sense of royalty, but also uniqueness. The dark wood elements in the room corresponded well with the checkerboard design on the floor. The young Goodwin was between the altar and the worshipful master. Although Johnson had a direct line of view from the west side of the room, his view was partially blocked by the so-called altar of sacred law, which was surrounded by the three lesser lights. From his perspective, Johnson could just about see the half-removed shirt of Goodwin and the back of his blindfold. George Riggs, the master of the lodge, was a highly successful banker in his late 50s, extremely resourceful in every sense of the word. He was a calculating machine with access to a great amount of money and strong political connections. Johnson was always cautious around him, and while he was good to have around in case you needed him, preferably Johnson wouldn't deal with the man unless he was utterly desperate. After the Senate passed the National Bank Act a few years ago, Riggs Bank gained access to federal war loans and greatly increased its influence. As the person controlling the money stream, George Riggs was one of the key people in the country. Also known as the president's banker, some of the Riggs clients included Van Buren, Taylor, and even Lincoln. "In whom do you put your trust?" Riggs asked Goodwin. His words returned an echo from the other end of the large room. "In God," Goodwin replied without any hesitation, despite the young man not having a clue of the rules he was agreeing to. Johnson remembered the time when he was going through the same ritual, a very long time ago. The whole ceremony was designed to question the beliefs and the seriousness of new members. Based on Goodwin's stiff shoulders, he was a bit tense, and Johnson knew he was trying hard to stay focused on the procedure. "Since in God you put your trust, arise. Follow your leader and fear no danger," said Riggs to the young man. Truth be told, Johnson didn't care about the ceremony. He was proud that he could switch off from any engagement that wasn't not critical to him and still automate his actions so nobody noticed that he wasn't paying attention. The only man who could oppose Johnson's candidate was Riggs. But that moment had long passed a few months ago, and the lodge ballot was successful with no objections raised. So, Johnson didn't feel the need to watch the ceremony so closely. Trying to hold back his smile, Johnson noticed the first deacon, positioned between Riggs and Goodwin. In clear view of everybody in the middle of the ceremony, the first deacon looked like his mind was elsewhere. Unfortunately for him, he couldn't hide it. The first deacon, of course, couldn't sit there with his chin in his palm, falling asleep. Being the president, Johnson had mastered the masquerade of looking like he was paying attention, having sat through various ceremonies throughout his political career.